Hi, this is Caleb with Dice Cut, and today I'm going to show you how to make the perfect steak. And with this method, it's pretty simple. I'm going to use a cast iron pan, a porcelain plate or any plate that's oven safe, and of course a steak. And what I have for today is a New York prime steak. And I'm going to show you how to do a method that I think is really tasty. I know that there's a lot of good methods on how to make steaks. I'm going to show you one that was inspired from a visit to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, and one that is decadent and one that is meant to impress. Alright, so the first step one is I want to salt the steak beforehand. So I've taken the steak out, I've let it sit out for a little bit, and then I just go ahead and take some kosher salt and just kind of sprinkle it fairly liberally over the surface of both sides. And this is done so that the salt will have a chance to permeate the meat a little bit as it rests. Ideally, I would probably let it rest for about an hour so that it gets pretty close to room temperature. For the second step, I want to take a porcelain plate or any plate that is oven safe, turn on the oven to about 400 degrees, and then place that plate in the oven to get it good and hot. And you want to leave it in the oven for the duration of the cooking. And the point of this is, as you'll see at the end, we're going to have a little bit of a presentation spectacle where we put some butter on the plate and it's going to sizzle as I place the steak on the plate. Next, I wanted to show you a little bit of my setup here. To make a great steak, you don't need a complex concoction of ingredients. What I have is, most importantly, salt. I also have some pepper that I'll freshly grind, and then I also have some garlic and some thyme and butter. And what I'll do is I'll do something called dressing the board, where I'll go ahead and chop up the garlic and spread some thyme on the cutting board, as well as some butter or oil for my steak to rest once it's outside of the oven. Basically, I'm trying to get it to a pretty fine chop. Doesn't have to be quite immense, basically, as long as I can spread out all the pieces of garlic on the board. That's pretty good. In addition, I've got some thyme that I'll just kind of pull off here a little bit, off the stems. I'll just kind of hit the board and just put a little bit of oil on the board for the meat to rest on. Usually add a little bit of salt as well for the meat to rest on. Okay, and now you have a dressed board so that my steak is just going to rest right on the garlic and the thyme and the oil and the salt. You could even add some butter to that if you like. So as the steak rests, usually you want to let your steak rest by about 5 minutes or so. It's going to take on that flavor of the garlic and the thyme and some of the salt. So it'll just make your steak taste better. Alright, now I've got my cast iron skillet set to high heat. I've got oil in the pan, just some vegetable oil that is shimmering and just about smoking now, so it's ready to add the steak to the pan. I'm going to take my steak and I'm just going to set it right there in the pan. It's going to sizzle, and I'm going to try to get a sear on it, probably about 2 minutes or so, maybe 3 at the most, to get a really good crust on it. And then I'm going to flip it and put it in the oven for, since this is a thinner steak, I'm guessing I'll probably put it in the oven from anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes, and that should get it fairly close to medium, which is what I'm shooting for. Okay, once the steak's been sitting there on the hot pan for about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, it should have a good sear on it, so it's ready to flip. I'm going to go ahead and just check it. Actually, you can see pretty good crust on there. What you could do sometimes is flip it on its side, on the fat side, so that you get a little bit of color on the fat part as well. And you can just hold it there for 30 seconds. So you got a little bit of color on the fat. Now it goes on to the uncooked side. Now it's ready to put in the oven. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and take my steak out of the oven. Make sure, get a mitt, it's hot. See, nice and sizzling. And rest it right on that delicious board that you dressed it. And take a foil, just go ahead and tent it over the meat. And you're going to let the meat sit for about 5 minutes or so. Okay, now here's where the magic has. My steak has had the chance to rest. I'm going to take that hot plate out of the oven. Just came right out the oven. I'm going to take, you have to do this quickly. I'm going to take a pat of butter. And you should see it begin to sizzle directly. I'm going to go ahead and take that steak and just set it right on top of the butter. And then you basically just take that directly to the table with the steak sitting on top of the sizzling butter. It'll sizzle for maybe 20 or 30 seconds at most. Put as much butter as you tend to like. It's not super healthy, but it is delicious, and the presentation is fantastic. Well, there you have it, YouTube. Perfect steak, seared on the stovetop, finished in the oven, put on a plate with hot sizzling butter. Bon appetit.